Welcome back. You are watching Bottom Line East Africa here on KTN News. Many thanks for joining us. And it's time to take a look at what has been making headlines in the year 2016, some of the biggest stories that kept it busy in the year 2016. And joining me in studio now is our senior political reporter here on KTN News, Duncan Haemba. Thank you very much for joining us. Once again, Merry Christmas, or should I wait till 25th?
Merry Christmas in advance.
In advance,
but
right?
season.
Yeah, but we're going to start with not very good situations that we saw just at the beginning of December. We had a very tragic accident in Naivasha that almost was welcoming us into the festive season.
Yes, it was very, very traumatizing, given the manner in which the whole incident happened, and then it was in the cover of darkness. And then sadly, not all families can be able to identify their kin who perished. Of course, we saw reports that family members are now being asked to take along toothbrushes, combs and all that, because they cannot conclusively identify which body or which remains belong to which family. So it shows you how horrendous the whole ordeal was. And of course, we saw the reports that were being filed by our colleagues, Rita Tinina, Mark Namaso and the team. Of course, it wasn't easy. And of course, yes, Caroline B, they were giving us a very, very grueling picture for a couple of days on what was transpiring.
Definitely a bad day to start off December. And still talking about tragedy, the beginning of this year, we saw an attack that we've never seen before. We've been attacked, the country has been attacked by Al-Shabaab. We had Westgate, it was really bad. We had Mpeketoni, but El Ade seemed to be the mother of all attacks.
Yes, but we should say in the country's history, in as much as it didn't happen within the border. But again, it remains mysterious because, of course, for obvious reasons, the total number has never been disclosed. So up to now, we just know that a couple of soldiers perished, but we've never been told the number. Of course, there's been push, and on the other side, the Al-Shabaab have been releasing quite a conflicting number of figures, but of course the government has never been keen to confirm or deny, of course, for obvious reasons. And you've been able to see once in a while they put online some photos of what we'd call prisoners of war, alleged soldiers that have been captured, tortured, very, terrifying or horrific images of them, but of course the government has been swift to pull them down. So you cannot ascertain as exactly what the number was, but you can't blame the government on that because it's an art of war. Of course, for the Al-Shabaab, what they wanted was a confirmation. If that is the number, they've said it's over 200. That one would be very, very damaging to the government.
Definitely.
So for obvious reasons, the reason why we've never gotten a confirmation of what exactly the number was.
So still till now, we're still doing speculation on the numbers and taking a look at people who've been buried so far.
Yes, and remember that even the families for the soldiers that were involved, initially they would be sending passionate appeals. We want to know our kin. If they died, we want to see their bodies. The few that were lucky, they buried their kin, but the rest, we understand, we cannot confirm. The families were silenced. Remember that, of course, in the military, can I call it the pedestrian knowledge that I have, it takes 7 years before they can declare an officer as missing in action. Missing in action means either you disappeared without trace or that. So for the entire season, for the entire 7 years, families will continue enjoying, of course, the benefits that the officers were having, as if they are working and all that. So perhaps the families were told, if you want to continue getting support, you have to shut your mouth, and that's why along the line that story died. But truth of the matter is, we might never know, and we will never know exactly the number that actually perished.
Well, Duncan, let's take a minute and take a look at Burundi before we come back to Kenya and take a look at matters IEBC, electoral laws, and what we've been witnessing this year. And of course, things to do with the judiciary. But before we come back to that discussion with Duncan Haemba, let's for a bit take a look at Burundi and what has managed to make headlines in that East African country that neighbors Rwanda. Well, foreign journalists were released seized in January after Burundi police swoop. Remember, Burundi had conflict over matters leadership and elections since 2015 when Pierre Nkurunziza refused to let go of power, and there have been protests and killings since then. So they obviously started the year on a very wrong foot, given the background of the protests that had been there until December, when tens were still being killed in those protests. Quite a bloodbath there. In February, Burundi rivals agreed to hold talks to end the crisis, and that includes everyone in the opposition in Burundi, and they had agreed, okay, we've seen a lot of blood shedding. Let's now just take a look, sit down and take a look at whether we can have a way forward in this particular situation. In February, the African Union said that they will not send any troops to Burundi. And of course, they were fed up with the back and forth with Pierre Nkurunziza and the situation in Burundi with Pierre Nkurunziza not really looking like he wants to let go of power or see some peace prevail in Burundi. In May, Rwanda expelled over 1,500 Burundis as their relationship became fray, and that is Burundi and Rwanda. Burundi accused Rwanda of financing and training rebels to ensure that Burundi continues to become unstable. Rwanda definitely not taking it very lightly. So this year it has been a very tense relationship between these two neighboring countries that are almost sisters, given that the tribes that are in Burundi are still the ones in Rwanda. Well, in August, Burundi officers fled the country over fears of repression. This again pegged on the situation that has been there since 2015. In August, still, Burundi rejected the United Nations police deployment amid the violence. Pierre Nkurunziza remaining put and rejecting assistance from the United Nations as they try to come in and negotiate or try and bring in a peacekeeping mission in Burundi to try and get a way forward on that situation. And finally, in September, the United Nations probe finds gross human rights abuses in Burundi. And of course, at some point also accused Rwanda of partaking in these activities in Burundi. So these are some of the stories that have been big in Burundi in the year 2016, even as its relationship with Rwanda continues to be quite unpredictable and quite tense. Let's come back to Kenya and that discussion that I was having here with Duncan Haimba, who is a senior political journalist here at the KTN News or the Standard Group. Let's quickly take a look at the judiciary. In May or June, Chief Justice William Mutunga announced his retirement, and this led to a lot of dramatic court cases with the retirement age controversy of Philip Tunoi and Kalpana Rawal, leading, of course, to the search for the next Chief Justice that led to Chief Justice David Maraga. How would you describe that for a year in Kenya as far as the judiciary is concerned?
I think it was very shameful, the drama that unfolded, because it exposed what would say the power struggles and behind the scenes backstabbing that was going on in the Supreme Court, which is the apex of the judiciary. Of course, the other levels in the judiciary look up to the Supreme Court, of course, being the senior most or the last resort or the last pole of court in terms of judiciary. But what unfolded immediately, Chief Justice Mutunga said he's opting for early retirement. It was very shaming because, one, the DCJ decided to stay put, and she was almost running away from her age because she was already past 70 and she declined to retire.
We're not mincing our words today, are we?
She refused to retire, and her time actually had come. And then we had Philip Tunoi, who also had decided that he's going to challenge his age. So two judges refused to acknowledge that.
Remember, he had a case that would bring his legacy down the drain.
Yes, and that was after he refused to accept that it was a sunset. He was in sunset years because he was past 70 and they had to retire. But he opted to file a court case. And it's along that line that I think something came up. Of course, the controversy that would eventually hound him out of office. So he left with his head bowed down. And he would have left with his head high up, because after serving all those years at his age, you never expected that such controversy would actually damage his character. And of course, that was the card that they had to pull to get him out of office. The same to the DCJ, Kalpana Rawal. So that was the drama that actually, then of course, remember that when it came to the ruling, some judges opted, there was that one, Jokindungu and J.B. Ojwang, of course. The last day, few hours before he left office, the Chief Justice then, Willie Mutunga, had to convene a 3-judge bench to decide on whether Rawal had to leave. So it was shameful. It left the judiciary actually bleeding.
All right, and I understand we don't have too much time, but we can't really leave without talking about the IEBC and the kind of protests that we've seen. And of course, we still have issues with the IEBC and electoral laws very many months down the line. Quickly, let's go through that before we take a look at Rwanda.
For the IEBC, I've always said, and it's my opinion, which I don't think it matters anyway. But
you're a journalist, it should
yes,
matter.
but I'm not supposed to state my opinion. But personally, if you'd ask me, it was a case of biting more than we could chew. The opposition was agitating for electoral reforms at IEBC for as long as we can remember. The government stayed put, so they had to run with the Machozi Monday that claimed some lives, property damaged, many were wounded, they're still in hospitals. Finally, when the government decided, okay, fine, let us have a consensus, they have to leave, graciously, the commission said we'll bow out. But what has followed is drama upon drama. Now we are a few months, we don't have the commission in place, things seem not to be moving, and the clock is ticking. So at this rate, we are worried how long will the new commissioners be in office, then preside over the election that appears to will be the highly contested and most controversial unless things are straightened.
Given that both sides right now are already accusing each other of planning to rig.
I mean, the opposition says they don't want anything to do with the manual or backup plan. That is a clear way to have the government rig. The government says they are aware foreign powers are working with the opposition, with a certain individual in the name of Michael Yard. They want to rig using technology, and therefore we must have a backup. So it's a game of suspicion, and you've seen the drama that unfolded this week, and there's a final round because the Senate will be having another session, special sitting next week. So we are not so sure what will happen, but already the country has been prepared that both sides are determined to emerge victorious come what may. So we really don't know how many winners we'll have, how many losers we'll have, but clearly for IBC it was a gamble. And Kriegler had warned that you cannot have changes 2 years to the next if you want to have a general election. Now it's coming to bite us, and I think, I hope it will not be a regrettable situation.
But given the kind of sins we've seen, all the way from Machozi Monday and now to members of parliament trying to sneak in new laws and passing them,
and
trying
fighting
to
viciously,
fighting viciously and insulting each other.
Yes.
Do you think there's another way we would have done this to make it right?
We would have done, I think, I think it's the presidency and the executive. The government belongs to the president. He needs to show leadership. There's confusion. They have the numbers. The government would have just looked for a better strategy to have dialogue that everybody would say dialogue took place. But they've sort of bulldozed because in any case, if they were to handle things systematically, there's no way the opposition would beat them because they have the numbers. And whatever push you want to have, you only require a simple majority. And that one, they would have done man-to-man marking in terms of voting. They would have had the day. So the bulldozing bit was a bit, I think, uncalled for, because now the perception that has been created is that the government will have and must have its way, which I don't think was the initial, it's not what the government wanted in the first place.
And definitely right now we are seeing a muscle measuring contest between these two parties, but thank you very much, Duncan, for coming in. Duncan Haemba is our senior political reporter here on KTN. He is helping us analyze some of the biggest stories of 2016. We've taken a look at all the countries in East Africa. Thank you very much for joining us here on KTN News, Bottom Line East Africa. Sophia Wanuna comes in next with a Friday briefing. Be sure to catch her. She promises a very exciting show for you. My name is Akisa Wandera. Enjoy the rest of your evening. A lovely weekend for you. Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.